is made after he says, don't make anything and replace me with it. So we get the idea. This is kind of a continuing idea of that. So Moses went back up the mountain, and for 40 days the people repented of the sin of the golden calf. Now we have completed the 40 days of self-reflection between the first day of Elul and, well, it's dark out, so Yom Kippur is technically over for this year. On Yom Kippur, Moses descended from the mountain carrying a second set of tablets. These tablets, however, contained what the first set did not: a means of restoration and redemption from sin in the Levitical laws to be administered by his priesthood. The sacrificial system came into being. Now they would be required to keep Torah under the penalty of death, because the wages of sin became death at this point. Whereas the first set of tablets were still under the order of Melchizedek, where you kept Torah because you were obedient, and it was counted to you as righteousness, just like with Abraham. Only in these could the people be forgiven of their sins, only by the sacrifice and the blood of bulls, rams, sheep, goats, and doves. Yahshua is our true Yom Kippur. Through him we can be redeemed, delivered, and restored. It is in him that we can be restored to the state of accepting and living by the first set of tablets. We go back to the curse of death that was a wage of sin is removed because of the blood of Yahshua. We can make teshuvah and be forgiven immediately, and we can keep Torah out of obedience and out of love, and that's counted back to us as righteousness. The same deal that Abram had is ours. So it is in him that we are restored to the state of accepting and living by the first set of tablets, being the distinct people of Yahweh Eloheinu, that's our Elohim, and as such being the teachers, the royal priesthood, in accordance to the word of Yahweh Elohim. We, however, must change and be renewed. Another book that we consider is Vayikra itself, when it speaks of the earthen vessels, that when it comes into contact with something that's not clean, it has to be destroyed, and it has to be replaced with a new one. So let's take a look at Jeremiah. This is chapter 18, verses 1 and 2. That says, the word which came to Jeremiah from Yahweh, saying, arise and go down to the potter's house, and there I will cause you to hear my words. So we go to the potter's house to hear the word, and we take a look at the Aramaic of Matthew 26, 6 through 13, that tells us this. Now, when Yahshua was in Bethany, in the house of Simon the potter, all of our King Jimmy and everybody else says Simon the leper. He couldn't be a leper. A leper would not have a house in the city. You say, well, it was one of the lepers that he had healed. He couldn't be one of the lepers that he has healed, because Leviticus says clearly that if a leper is healed from leprosy, he is no longer to be called a leper. Leper couldn't have servants, as we're going to read. That there was a servant girl that brought an alabaster jar. They couldn't own things. Simon the potter brings us truth in Jeremiah that found within the potter's house, as we're going to see, is restoration. There's Yahshua inside the potter's house. There came unto him a woman having an alabaster jar of very precious ointment, and she poured it on his head as he sat. But when his disciples saw it, they had indignation, saying, to what purpose is this waste? For the ointment might have been sold for much and given to the poor. When Yahshua understood, he said to them, why do you trouble this woman? For what she has done is a good work upon me. For you always have the poor with you, But me you have not always, for she has poured the ointment on my body. She did it for my burial. Verily I say unto you, wheresoever this good news shall be preached in the whole world, there shall also be this preached, what this woman has done. So we go to the potter's house to hear my words. This is what Yahweh was telling Jeremiah. Go to the potter's house to hear my words. We go there to hear the words of Yahweh Elohim, as we read in Jeremiah. We acknowledge what Yahweh did for us in sending his word in the flesh to pay our Levitical debt, and that through him we would enter into the priesthood of Melchizedek. In the next verses of this chapter in Matthew, Yahshua tells them to prepare a place for the Passover. But it was Isha, the woman, that anointed his feet. It says here in this story that she did his head, but in another story we also read that his feet were done, and that she washed his feet with her tears. And what we see here is that it is our spirit that is restored to our Elohim by the pouring out of his spirit. The unpolished brass pegs that held the tabernacle down, unpolished brass represents sin and judgment, became the polished feet of brass of Yahshua that represents restoration and redemption. And we read about this in Revelation 2:18, that says, and unto the messenger of the assembly in Thyatira write, these things says the Son of Elohim, whose eyes are like unto a flame of fire, and his feet like fine brass. The tabernacle with the unpolished brass that held it down became flesh, held the word, and that through his blood those pegs became polished brass. And now our redemption is found again in the tabernacle. Then we read again Jeremiah. Then I went down to the potter's house, and behold, he was at work on the wheels. And whenever the vessel that he made of clay was marred, in the hand of the potter he made it again another vessel, as seemed good as the potter to make. When we are marred in the potter's hand, he will make us as new. It seems good to our Elohim to restore us and he made a way on Yom Kippur for us to find that restoration. We have to take a look at ourselves. That's why we have all this time prior to Yom Kippur to self-reflect. But what happens if we choose not to yield to Yahweh through the restoration offered by and through Yahshua? Then we consider Revelation again, 2:26, that starts, and he that overcomes and keeps my works unto the end, to him will I give power over the nations. That's what happens if we keep the word. And he shall rule them with a rod of iron. There's a rod of iron. This is judgment. As the vessels of the potter shall they be broken to shivers, even as I received of my Father. That if they don't yield, then this rod of iron, this rod of judgment, rod, lamed, the instruction of judgment, will break them to pieces to where they have to be restored. And if they choose not to be restored, then they remain broken in pieces. Okay? Those who will not yield will be broken with a rod of iron. As the vessels of a potter, they shall be broken to shivers. Iron represents judgment. And it is the judgment of Elohim that will break those who continue to be unclean vessels, just like Leviticus says. Because without the restoration of Yahshua, one remains under the Levitical law, whether he's a Jew or a Gentile. Okay? So today is the Day of Atonement. Today's about choice and not about begging. Would you give up the golden calf and yield to the care and love of Yahweh your Elohim through his word, redemption, deliverance, and restoration, who is Yahshua, and be written in the book of life? Or will you continue to worship your golden calf only to be shattered like unclean pottery by the righteous judgment of the word of Yahweh, and as such be erased from the book of life? As always, the choice is ours to make. And we have some things in this verse 27 of Vayikra 23 that I didn't put into the notes because I kind of, I lay there in bed and I look over the notes and I said, wow, well, too late, I'll just show them afterwards. So
We went over it last night.
let's take a look at this phrase. This phrase says, ve initem et nafshot echem. Okay? What does this mean? It means, and you shall humble, okay, or you shall afflict. And then it says, your souls. But as always in English, we leave something out. We leave something out. The root of this word is ana. Yes, that's a nun. Ana. Okay? Ana, it can mean humble, but it's not its primary definition. Ana primarily, interestingly enough, ana means to be busy with. To be busy with something. Let me pick up these notes because I can't see them from all the way over there. Okay? To be occupied or to be busy with. Okay? Now, this word comes from the root nefesh, that means soul, can also mean life. Okay? Soul or life can also mean mind. So, mind. So to be occupied or be busy with your soul, your life, or your mind. Okay? The aleph and the tav, though, is what we leave out. That is a representation of the word of Yahweh. So, what is, right off the bat, an idea that we could get from to humble yourselves or to humble your soul in this phrase? That in its simplest forms, we say to be occupied or to be busy with our soul, our life, and our mind through the word of Yahweh. This is something that we do on Yom Kippur, more than simply, well, it's a day that we don't get to eat anything and we have to go all day without eating. The Torah doesn't say anything about not eating. It doesn't say anything about afflicting yourselves, because this is the primary definition. Secondary definition is to humble yourself. Way on down the road, it's to afflict, and at the bottom of the batch means to weaken the body. So we ask, how does weakening my body, how does afflicting myself, how does not taking a bath, not grooming, not brushing my teeth, not putting on deodorant, how does that help me to be occupied or busy with examining my soul and comparing it to the Word of Yahweh? It doesn't. Consider what the rabbis say, because what we've just talked about is what the rabbis say. It's takanot that you should fast. Don't eat because you're weakening your body by not eating. The rabbis also say that you shouldn't groom. Don't brush your hair, don't brush your teeth, don't even put on deodorant, don't even wear leather shoes. Basically, look miserable. What did Yahshua say? Joshua said, wash, groom, anoint your head with oil. Don't let him even see that you're fasting. So if we're going to fast, we should not look like a bunch of schlemiels. Okay? So it doesn't mean to afflict yourself. It literally means to be occupied or busy with your soul. Looking at it in comparison to what the Word says. Now, this has a root, like everything else. Ana. That has a root that means to answer, to respond, to testify or be a witness. Testify. Okay? This can go further in that it represents the inner being of a person. And it can also mean their appetites, not the appetite that you're hungry. We all have an appetite now. Appetites, desires, passions, lusts, and then it also points to dubious character. That's good enough. So, what is another thing that we can look at? Is that on this day that we are to be occupied or busy with examining our soul, our life, where we are through the Word, we are looking for an answer, a response to show us, to testify about us, to be a witness about us before Elohim through the Word that reaches our very inner being. It is through the Word that we examine our appetites, desires, passions, lusts. Do I have any dubious character traits that I need to work on, that I need to fix? We're looking at Yom Kippur, the most important day of the year that we're supposed to just not do anything and think about. It'd be a whole lot easier to think about this with a cup of tea and some snack cakes. But what I'm getting at is that we've been so distracted with this whole fasting idea and not grooming idea and all this other stuff that I don't know how the rabbis missed it. We have a third thing that it means, because this goes down to another root that means to receive or to get an answer. And then over here, this has another root that it means to refresh oneself. So, what happens when we're occupied or busy with taking a look at our soul through the Word to receive an answer or response as to where we are? That when we get the response and we're able to make teshuvah, we receive or get an answer that allows us to become refreshed in our day-to-day. There's a whole lot more to Yom Kippur than simply struggling through all these things. So we see that there's a lot going on in these things that says, and you shall humble your souls. That has a whole lot more than do than simply, well, I'm not going to eat for 24 hours, but I'm not going to do anything else. This is a time that we're supposed to spend looking understanding, it's on the 10th day of the 7th